morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Choi Yong-pyo, Dongsin University Professor Emeritus. What we are going to discuss in Track C, Session 2 is vocational education in unified Korea. It is a challenge for us to end the era of national division and open a new era of reunification. Fortunately, a unification-friendly atmosphere is being created both internally and externally. In accordance with the positive atmosphere, it is necessary for each section of the society to be equipped with appropriate policies aiming at reunification. Vocational education cannot be excluded. Thus, this session will discuss policy directions and challenges surrounding vocational education and training in the new era of unified Korea and the strategies we have to prepare at this point. To begin with, I'd like to introduce two speakers and two panelists. The two speakers came from Germany, which achieved reunification ahead of us and is equipped with advanced vocational education and training system. The first speaker, the first on my left, is Birgit Thoma, the head of Department of Internalization of Vocational Education Training and Knowledge Management, Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training. The second speaker, the second on my left, is Bernhard Seliger, Residence Representative, Korea Office, Hans Seidel Foundation. Now, I introduce the panelist, Kang Il-kyu, the third on my left, Senior Research Fellow in Korean Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, and Kim Young-moo, the fourth on my left, member of the Board of Directors, Committee for the Democratization of North Korea Strategy Center. Each presentation session is 25 minutes long, and each discussion time is for 10 minutes. Total time for answers is 20 minutes, including 10 minutes for answers to the two panels' questions. The rest 10 minutes will be assigned for answering the floor's questions. If you still have time left, we'll have a pre-discussion. Please submit the questionnaire 30 minutes before the ending time. Then I'll summarize these questions and share it to everyone. You can submit it to our staffs when they pass by. Next, what will follow is the second presentation by Bernhard Seliger.
Yes, Professor Choi and ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to be here and talk to you and about vocational education in a unified Korea. But how can we talk about this topic when we don't even know when, how, and even if Korea will be unified? It's very, very difficult. I mean, we can speculate and say, build training centers here, do training there. So what I want to do is maybe instead to talk about the experience we have up to date. And Mrs. Thoman just said, it's important to use any chance to get prior encounters with the North. And I will show you what is already possible today from the experience we have at Hans Seidel Foundation. But let me first review very shortly something of the German dual vocational training. You heard already something of that from Mrs. Thoman, but just as a reminder, because I'm not sure if everybody is familiar here with the concept, the combination of theory and praxis. We have in Germany currently around 350 officially recognized training programs which lead to a dual vocational training degree. And we can say there are three very important effects of the program as we understand it in Germany. Namely, first of all, that the training system is contributing to a strong SME-based economy, which includes not only SME as suppliers for dominant companies, as here in Korea, but also the emergence of hidden champions. Secondly, it contributes to comparatively low levels of youth unemployment. That's a problem which has been discussed in the previous session here in Track C. And finally, it contributed to the strong industrial core of the German economy. Though being a service economy, we still have quite a strong industrial core. Finally, there is a challenge which is taken up now, that it to open ways for further qualification for successful graduates. That is how the system can become transparent enough and also open for further promotion. Can we transfer this program to other countries? Yes, but we have always to see that every country has its own situation and has to adapt to that. And I want to recall the experience of our foundation in China, because it's a neighboring country and it's a country where we run a number of vocational training schools. Our work in China started in 1979. That time it was in a situation where many people, including me, when we go to North Korea today, think about, it's very similar to the situation we had in China in the late 70s and early 80s. And our foundation worked since 1980 with the State Education Commission, which is now the Ministry of Education. And we started to found a regional network of dual educational training centers in quite diverse fields like automotive, electronics, also a center for rural professions, including a model farm. That was all in the east of China, when China started to develop in the eastern provinces. And from there, nowadays, we move for knowledge transfer to the west. And it looks a little bit like this. I hope you can see it. These small blue rings are our training centers in China, which were founded mostly in the 1980s and 1990s. For example, one of our first projects was in Wuhan. It's a brewing academy for brewing beer. You know, Germans are famous for brewing beer. So the Chinese said, okay, we want to learn how to do it. And still today, half of Chinese brewmasters come from that brewing academy. We had in Hangzhou a teacher training center. We had in Shanghai a center for electronics and automotive. We had in Shandong province in Pingdu a center for the rural economy, etc. And from there now we move together with our partners from China, that is the Ministry of Education, to the western provinces, for example, Gansu, or also the very west, the Inner Mongolia, and even Tibet province, in two ways. One of them is that we bring teachers from these provinces to the west, where we have the established centers, but also we bring smaller workshops or smaller schools also directly to the east. And that led then to a very strong network. Not all of this is done as a one-to-one copy of German vocational training. That's very important. We had trials where we really used this dual educational training. For example, in Pingdu, where we have the School for Rural Economy, we have around 6,000 apprentices, and 1/4 of them are taught according to a German curriculum. That's a trial. The other curriculum is Chinese, but the exchange with China is very, very important. And it worked for a long time, for 30 years now, in a practical way, and it works also in a theoretical way. We have now the so-called German-Chinese Alliance for Vocational Training. That is a government-to-government activity, and I think you are also involved at the VVIB in this platform to discuss the future of vocational training, to bring stakeholders together, and to come to knowledge transfer. So there is knowledge transfer possible, but we have always to see it cannot be a blueprint developed in Germany which then is brought to China or to Korea or to any other country, but you have to find your own way for vocational training. Now, in Hans Seidel Foundation in Korea, we started in 2003 to work with North Korea, and we also thought that one of the most important things is knowledge transfer, and we started to think about knowledge transfer. There were already at that time some endeavors, especially in the field of the economy, to come to capacity building. For example, there was a Swedish program with the Royal Institute of Technology of Sweden and the Stockholm School of Economics offering business and finance training. There is an NGO called Chuseon Exchange. They do training in a wide field from special economic zones to business training. There was something called the Pyongyang Business School, which was in effect a weekend and afternoon school run by various NGOs there, plus I think the Hong Kong Management Association, which is closed now. It was financed by the Swiss Development Corporation, but it's closed now. And there is something you might know, the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, Kwakisuldeakyo, which provided some training. In that field, we started also to do training, and that is in economics, and then we branched out to various fields like clean development and renewable energy, agriculture, forestry, and various other projects like Books for North Korea, scholarships. We have currently 2 students studying in Germany. That is a program now since a number of years, etc. Now, how does this look like? To give you one example, from 2006 to 2009, we ran the so-called EU DPRK Trade Capacity Project. That was a training project in the field of trade. And you see here some of the activities we did, seminars, study trips to Germany, etc. It's a very peculiar way of training, and I want just to make one remark on that. I don't know, you see here this first picture on the left, and that was one of our first seminars, and for a long time we had to discuss where to put this, our slides here, or our whiteboard, because the North Koreans argued we were not allowed to put it just frontally here where everybody could have seen it, because then the 2 leaders would have to look down upon that. So for 3 hours we were sitting there and discussing where to put it. Now we had to put it on the side where not everybody could see it, but at least it didn't offend their sense of propriety. So that's really very typical, and we meet these problems all the time. Another problem we have is, and that's very important in relation to vocational training, we say we would like to teach students, apprentices, young people. But these people usually are not allowed to meet foreigners. To meet a foreigner, you have already to be established. To travel outside, you need to be a travel cadre, a special form of official. You only get a passport when you are really already firm in your socialist worldview. So it's very, very difficult to meet those people which originally we wanted to meet. What we can settle on is to meet mid-ranking officials and young officials, and we think it's also very useful to do, but training like in other countries for young people is very, very difficult. One of the fields we worked in the last 5 years in is renewable energy and the clean development mechanism. We were asked to do so, and things we did was to help North Korea to register a clean development project, especially hydropower plants at the UNFCCC, which is a World Climate Secretariat. This sounds very technical, but indeed it involved a lot of training. It needed training for financial aspects of the projects, for the setting up and designing the documents, the so-called project design documents or PDDs, for monitoring and evaluation, for a number of things. So what we did not do is to invest in these projects, but what we did do is do training in these projects. And we also, again, you know, as Koreans, the word seeing is believing, or it's better to see one time than to hear 100 times. So we brought North Koreans, for example, to Germany to look at things which are now quite common also in your country, like solar plants, etc. And then we started to bring model units to North Korea also, like here a biogas plant or some solar panels, etc. The similar project we had in the field of agriculture, especially organic agriculture. Organic agriculture sounds interesting, but in North Korea it means agriculture without any artificial inputs, because there's no fertilizer, there are no pesticides, so they have to find organic inputs. And among others, we developed with the North Korean Academy of Science the first textbook on organic agriculture, small textbook, and we brought the North Koreans to Pingdu, to our vocational training school in China. And there again, we had a long discussion. We asked them to send young apprentices. Usually, as I said, there are 6,000 Chinese students, and 1,500 of them are trained according to the German model. We said we can bring 10 students in, but they said, if you bring students in, you also have to bring in 2 of our teachers, and we have to make sure that the students do not talk with the Chinese. That was obviously not acceptable for us, so it was a long discussion. Finally, what we do is to bring in teachers or to bring in scientists, and it's quite interesting. We were first not sure if they would really, if we would not have a level mismatch, because we run there a vocational training school for 16 to 18-year-olds, and we have a teacher training there, and then we brought people from the Academy of Science and from the North Korean Academy of Science in, which usually have a PhD and are quite advanced in age. But what we found out is what we do as teacher training in China was highly relevant and interesting for the Academy of Science of North Korea, simply due to the fact that there are a lot of new technologies and developments which are not taught in the North. We related this also to a farm project in Anbyeon, and finally we have a new project now on sustainable forestry. We started in 2014 with funds from the European Union, a training center in the modular forestation in Pyeonggan-namdo. We are currently working on that. You probably heard that North Korea puts a strong focus on that topic. What I want, we'll skip this now, but what I want to show you now are some of the results of that. First of all, training can achieve already now quite impressive numbers. Until now, we had in trade and economic training more than 500 participants, energy more than 300, agriculture more than 300, plus the North Koreans themselves, they did training, one-day seminars on organic farming and organic fertilizer for more than 45,000 participants up to date in the last 5 years. We had training on forestry, we had 12 study trips, 8 scholarships, and we had 5 trainings in China, which lasted from 2 weeks to 3 months. Now, what can we do with that trainings? Training in North Korea means usually 2 days training, 1 or 2 days field trip, and abroad, as I said, from 2 weeks to 3 months. First of all, what we cannot do, we don't make a modern forester in 2 days. And we don't make a modern farmer in 3 months even. That's not possible. But what we can do, we can use capacity building as an appetizer for more thorough educational programs. It's very important to show the gap, to show the North Koreans how far the gap is between what they do and what people do in China. For example, we have a very intelligent and energetic woman who is the director of the farm in Anbyeon we work with. around 50 years old. And when they first came to China, to Pingdu, we did a lot of field trips and looked at the small farms there. Pingdu is a Shandong province, and there's really, farms are not very modern, and they are quite small, 2 hectares, 5 hectares, 10 hectares. But after the trip, she said, before she always thought her farm is the best farm in the world. And only afterwards she found out in China there's much better farms. And she didn't see really the modern ones, but just very small ones. So to show this gap is very important in terms of also of the possibilities people have in other countries, openness, etc. Third of all, there's a necessity for capacity building, for knowledge transfers in all fields. Give me any field, in all fields it's very important to do that. And then capacity building is not only transfer of knowledge, but it's trust building. And that's the point I think Mrs. Thoman also referred to before. It's very important to have prior contacts. You cannot plan now for unification without first build trust. That's what your president says, but you also have to do it. You have to meet the North Koreans. You have to build this trust. As I said, there are also limits. We would like to start at the bottom. That would be a good approach, bottom up, to have people trained in vocational training, then to go to university education, etc. But that's most difficult because the status in North Korea, status considerations don't allow that. Only older people are allowed. Now the youngest people we get out are usually 30, and if we get people out, it's always at least 2, and 1 has to be married so that they don't run away. So that's a little bit the problem. Now, what is the potential for training after unification? First of all, there's a massive requalification necessary. The field of agriculture I know maybe best. North Korea was mechanized until 1990, though the mechanization was based on, let's say, for example, tractors, which came from the Soviet Union model of the 1950s, and that was based on a German model of the 1930s. So it was not a very advanced mechanization, but it was there. Now it's not there. The farm we work with has 1 tractor and 167 cows, oxen. So that's the reality of farms in North Korea today. And also, naturally, the people are not anymore farmers, entrepreneurs, as they should be in a market economy, but today they are tractor operators, they are milkers, they are planters, etc. So this requalification is very important. And there, I think, vocational training is important. And the second and equally important, even maybe more important point, if you start a vocational training offensive or campaign, it might play a role in preventing mass migration. You need to give the people a perspective. And if ever North Korea opens, in whatever form, unification or simply opening of the country, there's a huge attraction of a country with the same language and culture and 100 times higher wages. Simply people will migrate anyway. So to prevent everybody from coming, you need some form of qualification, and vocational training, especially for the rural areas, might be very important. And last but not least, I would say from my experience as living here a long time, not so much from the German experience, but I lived 17 years here and feel quite Korean in that sense. I think it might be a potential also to change a little bit the South Korean industry structure, namely if vocational training could contribute to a more healthy sector of small and medium enterprises. So that's my conclusion. Thank you very much.
If you look around the floor, most attendees are Korean. So please understood that I speak in Korean. Also, it's an international forum. Instead, simultaneous translation is provided. 두 분 주제 발표가 이제 끝이 났습니다. 이어서 오늘 대부분의 우리 토론은 한국어로 이렇게 진행을 하기 위해서 제가 방금 멘트를 보내드렸지 않습니까? 네. 그래서 이 토론을 듣도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 강일규 박사님을 모시도록 하겠습니다.
먼저 두 분 발표 사례를 잘 듣고 저도 그 연구자의 한 사람으로서 독일 사례에 대해서 많은 공부를 하였습니다. 현재 한국 직업력 개발원에서는 한 20여 년 동안 통일을 대비해서 북한의 직업교육 훈련 분야에 대한 연구를 꾸준히 해왔습니다. 그러던 차에 금년도의 글로벌 HRD 포럼에서 이 주제를 가지고 독일 통일에서 겪었던 그 직업교육 훈련 분야의 사례, 그리고 한스 재단에서 북한에 방문해서 그 여러 가지 그 경험을 듣고 저희가 통일을 준비해서 통일을 대비해서 그 직업교육 훈련 분야에서 어떠한 정책적 혹은 진출 기업에서 시사점을 얻을지 많은 공부를 했다고 봅니다. 먼저 그 통일 한국 시대에서 북한 지역의 주민들에 대한 직업교육 훈련은 상당히 중요하다고 봅니다. 왜 그런가 하면은 우리는 남한에서의 그 직업교육 훈련은 자본주의 또는 시장 경제에 토한 직업교육이 훈련이 이루어졌는데 거기에 따라서 남한 사람들의 어떤 직업에 대한 또는 직업 능력에 대한 의식이 상당히 높고 또 거기에 대한 그 개념이 명확하지만은 북한 근로자들은 그런 것이 부족하기 때문에 이 통일 시대의 북한 근로자들에 대한 직업에 대한 새로운 의식의 패러다임이 필요하다, 정착이 필요하다 이런 생각이 들고 또 북한 주민들의 전반적인 직업 능력 향상이 필요하고 또 그렇게 함으로써 북한 근로자들의 기능이라든지 기술 수준이 적정화가 필요하고 그를 통해서 북한 주민들이 고용이 창출되고 남북 경협의 활성화 또 이러한 것이 통일 이후에는 우리나라의 국가 경쟁력 제고에 가장 큰 하나의 동력이 될 수 있다라는 취지에서 통일 한국 시대의 북한 지역 주민들에 대한 직업력 개발은 상당히 중요한 요인이다 이렇게 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그런 차에 저희들이 이제 오늘 같이 그 독일의 먼저 선행의 어떤 경험을 통해서 보았을 때 독일은 상당히 그 통일 과정에서 직업교육 훈련 분야에 여러 그 사례가 있었지만 사실은 저희가 방문하고 연구한 결과에 보면은 충분한 준비는 하지 못했다. 왜냐하면 통일이 이렇게 갑자기 올 줄 몰랐기 때문에 다른 영역에서도 그런 준비가 많지 않았다라는 걸 저도 이제 연구를 통해서 알았는데 역시 이런 그 동독이라든지 이런 그 과거의 그 경험은 현재 앞으로 남북 통일 후에 우리에게 시사하는 바가 상당히 크다고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 여기에 오늘 그 토만 씨의 그 발표에서 하나 질문을 드리고 싶은 것이 그 동서독이 통일했을 시기에 직업교육 훈련 분야에 가장 큰 어려움이 무엇이었는지 그에 대해서 질문을 드리고 싶습니다. 두 번째는 그러면은 남북한에서도 통일했을 때 직업교육 훈련 분야에서 또 예상되는 어려움이 무엇인가? 거기에 대해서 한번 그 고견을 듣고 싶습니다. 다음으로 이제 저도 이제 평양이나 다른 지역을 여러 번 방문해봤는데 북한의 직업교육 훈련 시설이라든지 기자재 또는 교광사 상당히 열악합니다. 그러나 과거에 우리는 남한의 기업들이 북한에 진출해서 북한 근로자들에 대해서 직업교육 훈련시킨 경험이 있습니다. 예컨대 IMRI라든지 또는 엘칸토 이런데 그 기업들이 북한에 진출해서 근로자들에 대해 직업교육 훈련을 시킨 경험이 있는데 거기에서 우리가 많은 시사점을 얻었습니다. 중요한 것은 그 사람들 북한에서의 소위 시장 경제라든지 자본주의 이런 데에 대한 인식이 좀 낮다. 오늘 젤리거 씨가 발표한 것처럼 북한의 많은 학생이라든지 또는 관리자들에게 경제에 대한 교육도 시키고 또 거기에 서부 유럽의 어떤 경험을 이제 얘기를 했지만 그런 것들이 짧은 시간 내에 바뀌기는 상당히 어려울 것이다. 그러나 점차 북한 지역도 이런 자본주의 또 시장 경제 이런 거에 대한 교육이나 또는 거기에 대한 인식이 제고가 필요하다라는 것이 저희 직업교육 훈련과 연계시켰을 때 상당히 중요한 요인이라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 젤리거 씨에게도 몇 가지 하나 질문드리고 싶은 것이 지금 우리가 당장 언제 통일될지 모르지만 독일처럼 당장 통일이 된다면 과연 북한 지역의 자본주의 시장 경제 체제는 수용 가능성이 있는지 그런 점에서 또 두 번째는 북한 지역 시장 경제 체제가 과연 북한 인력으로 지금 현재 북한 인력으로 관리할 수 있는지 물론 젤리거 씨가 한스 재단을 통해서 북한의 그 관료라든지 학생들을 이제 자본주의 시장 경제에 대한 그 경험을 시켰지만 그 숫자는 상당히 지금 전체적인 거에 비해서 적고 그러나 앞으로 이제 필요하지만 과연 통일됐을 때 북한의 경제, 산업 이런 것들을 현재 북한 인력 관료들로 해서 관리가 가능한지 만약 그것이 부족하다면은 과연 동독도 서독의 관료들이 다 파견돼서 관리를 했었는데 그러면 통일 후에 북한 지역의 그 시장 경제라든지 또는 모든 그 시스템을 관리하는 그 남한 출신을 인력을 양성해서 파견해서 관리하게 한다. 뭐 이런 방법에 대해서는 그 독일의 경험을 봤을 때 과연 그 가능한 건지 이렇게 그 질문을 드려보겠습니다. 사실 1시간 전에 미리 만나서 많은 토론을 했기 때문에 시간상 저희는 많이 좀 고견을 듣는 그런 방향으로 해서 토론을 여기서 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
자, 그러면은 우리 지금 김영목 이사님께서는 질문은 이렇게 제시하시지는 않고 북한의 실정을 중심으로 하면서 도움이 되는 말씀을 주셨네요. 지금 이제 1차 토론이 끝났으니까 이 토론에 대해서 아까 강일규 박사님이 우리 토만 씨한테 2개의 질문을 주셨습니다. 그리고 젤리거 씨한테는 3개의 질문을 주셨잖아요. 그래서 거기에 대한 우선 답변을 한번 들어보는 것이 좋겠죠. 네, 그리고 이제 시간으로 보니까 우리 프로에 계신 분들의 질문에 대해서도 간단하게 말씀드릴 수 있는 그런 시간이 있을 것 같습니다. 있으시면은 지금 설문지를 우리 스태프한테 주셔서 제출해 주시기 바랍니다. 자, 그러면 먼저 토만 씨. 답변 좀 주시죠. 네, 여기 답변해 주실 건 아까 질문된 게 동서독 통일을 이루고 할 때 나타났던 어려움이 무엇이다 했던가. 두 번째, 우리가 남북한 통일 시에 예견되는 어려움은 어떤 것이라고 보는가. 여기에 대해서 우리 토만 씨의 답변을 듣도록 하겠습니다. 네, 부탁합니다. 네.
Thank you very much for the questions. And my colleague from Krivat, he's perfectly right in stating that the coordination could be done in a better way, so that coordination is an issue. And in fact, it was one of the main challenges at the time of the reunification. So to my mind and in my assessment, the biggest challenge was really the need to hurry up after the political decision to adopt the West German Vocational Training Act at more on a political level to the decision of the German Democratic Republic to accede to the constitution of the Federal Republic of Germany at that time. So it was very important to establish equivalent training situation in a very small period of time, because the young people at that time, they want to have the same preconditions as they know were existing in West Germany. They want to have the same certificates. They want to have the journeyman certificates, and they want to compete on the now national German labor market. So, so this was really a top priority, because if not, there was the risk that they move from east to west, and already a lot of them did. So this demand to really in a very short period of time to try to establish equivalent training situations, this was utmost priority. And at the same time, the companies were in a difficult situation. They had maybe even more difficult problems to solve than to think about offering apprenticeship positions. They were fighting for survival to a certain degree. And so it was important to have this kind of buffer with intercompany training facilities that I mentioned in my speech. So time was an issue, hurrying up was an issue. Difficulties that could be expected. Well, I think it's good to, in order to overcome or in order to to cope with difficulties. I think it's good to reflect what already has been done, and I think there are quite a number of things already has been mentioned, and to look for those what you call the low-hanging fruits in a change process, meaning where are already projects, ideas that are feasible, that can give success and motivate others to enter the change process. I think this is quite relevant to take the time to identify these low-hanging fruits and to map them and to coordinate them.
네, 고맙습니다. 예. 두 번째 답변은 우리 브루이스 셀리거 씨한테 부탁을 드려보도록 하겠습니다. 예, 세 개 문제를 제출해 주셨죠. 북한의 자본주의 시장을 수용할 수 있는 태세는 어느 정도 갖추고 있는 것인가. 두 번째는 통일 후 시장경제 도입 시에 북한 인력으로서 커버할 수 있는 것인지에 대해서. 그리고 세 번째는 제가 확실치는 않은데요. 강윤기 박사님, 뭐 독일의 경험에 비추해서 줄 수 있는 시사점 정도를 말씀하신 것 같은데요. 네, 여기에 대해서 우리 브루이트 셀리거 씨의 답변을 듣도록 하겠습니다. 아시다시피 우리 셀리거 씨는 한국에 17년간 계시면서 이 북에 직접적으로 가셔가지고 직업 교육을 갖다가 실험 적용하는 그런 많은 좋은 경험을 가지고 계십니다. 네, 좋은 답변을 기대하겠습니다.
Yeah, 감사합니다. Well, the first point I want to make is about the market economy. I've been now very often in North Korea and met different people from different ministries and enterprises and farms and the forest sector, different sectors, and I never ever met anybody I would qualify as a communist, meaning somebody believing in Marx or in the theoretical concepts or even in the centrally planned economy. The North Koreans are already today very completely 100% materialistic, and almost all of them not only know the market, 100% know the market, and of these 100%, 80% are dependent on the market. There may be 20%, mainly the army, and a few functionaries, etc., for whom really still the public distribution or the distribution by state organs is enough. The rest of the people is dependent on the market. They go there every day. In that sense, they certainly accept the market, and the market is an improvement over the situation of the 1990s with the famine. At the same time, the North Korean market economy is a very badly working market economy. Especially, it's a very unfair and unequal market economy. I mean, the main idea of a market economy is that it's a great system to match supply and demand in a way which basically also is fair, namely, which shows where are the scarcities, accordingly sets the prices. But the North Korean market economy is very much compartmentalized. That is, locally, you have local markets, you have people who have transportation, which are usually exclusive, let's say, for example, military people who have a transportation or certain enterprises. So the market does not lead to similar prices or equal prices everywhere. And the same is true for access to foreign currency and many other things. So the market economy the people experience is not a fair market or a market where the chances are more or less equal, or at least more or less there for everybody. And that means the people now learn something about the market economy which you might not want, namely that the market is really a very brutal survival of the fittest, and that the fighting in the market can be done with every means possible. So that's one point where I see a problem, really. Not the existence of the market. Everybody accepts the market, but the market they think of might be different from the model you want to promote. And then the second problem, can the North Koreans rebuild their own economy? First of all, theoretically they can. Eastern Europeans had to do so. And I'm an economist, so I will give you an example from my field. I worked a lot with Estonia, a small country there, and there in the economics faculty, when the change came in 1991 in their case, one got the macroeconomics book and read it. He was a macroeconomics professor. One got the microeconomics book, he was a microeconomics professor. And one got the book on labor, he was a labor market professor. It worked, but not very well. The problem is, you can do everything better than the North Koreans. Even if you teach them a year or 2 years, still, let's say in the banking sector, you teach them 1 or 2 years banking. We did that in Germany with our banking academies. The people were trained a year, but they had no chance to compete with a West German bank manager who had 10 years of experience, who used all the modern means, and who had simply a different network also. So you can do everything better. The problem is if you go over there and take over their economy, it creates a lot of social problems. People feel, that's what I think Mr. Kim said in the end, people feel they lose their job and they lose their life chances. Suddenly somebody comes from Busan or from Daejeon and he's the boss of you and he tells you what to do. That can create resentment. We saw that in Germany. That was a problem. It was natural to exchange the elite because we had politically, part of the elite had to be exchanged and simply for functional reasons. The West Germans did it better, not because they were more clever, but simply because they had better education and a more appropriate one. So what you have to do is, for that reason especially, you have to qualify the North Koreans very much. And if not, and that's what Mr. Kim then said, you will get this very strong migration. You will anyway get migration because simply the income difference is too big. But a little bit of migration is not bad. And if the young people go and the flexible people go and they are trained in Hyundai here, it's a chance for the companies here, but it's also good for them. And some of them go back, not all, but some of them come back and they maybe one day found their own enterprise or they lead the branches there. But it will be a long process. And if you think of a unification similar to the German one, you will have a massive also transfer of elites. And it took us 25 years. Now we have roughly an equilibrium. Now we have some East German regions where in-migration is bigger than out-migration, but it took one generation. And I guess that is also the answer to what Mr. Kim said. We need to send teachers and to qualify the people, but it cannot be done overnight. But in my opinion, that's now my appeal to you, also to Krivet people here. We can cooperate already now. I know it would be best to send South Korean teachers. That's not possible. But what we can do already now, our partners accept largely South Korean material, as long as it's not political. It's a very new and recent thing, but if we have technical training, they say, okay, bring Korean texts. And that would be also my question to you, or my offer for cooperation. Let's cooperate. There are many fields, let's say, where we are in agriculture, in forestry, in other fields, where we could use textbooks from here. It is possible, especially if they're electronic and not so conspicuous, because to bring them through the customs is not so easy, but later our partners, they accept them. And I think there would be already a large field of cooperation which is not so open. I mean, you cannot write it in Yonhap News, then it will not happen. But if you very quietly cooperate, and you can even meet people in China or in other places, occasionally we do it to bring South and North Koreans together to discuss things in a very quiet and confidential way. And that, in my opinion, would be a great preparation for unification.
지금 토론자들의 질문에 대한 답변은 이제 이것으로 끝났고요. 이제 우리 프로에서 질문이 4개가 들어왔습니다. 지금 아직 전달을 못했는데요. 상당히 좀 포괄적인 것도 있고 또 이 범위를 벗어나는 것도 있고 그렇습니다. 하나는 그 메르켈 총리가 동독 출신으로서 어떻게 독일 독일의 총리가 될 수 있었는지 뭐 이런 질문이 들어왔네요. 네, 상당히 흥미있는 질문입니다. 이것은 우리 브리지 톨만 씨가 좀 준비를 해주시면 좋겠습니다. 네. 그다음에 나머지 셋은 이 베르나르트 엘리거스한테 들어왔거든요. 네, 근데 하나는 이 독일은 통일 이전부터서 일부 직업 교육 교류가 있었던 것 같은데 한국 사회에서는 지금 교류가 안 되고 있지 않습니까? 구체적으로. 그래서 이 남한의 직업 교육 프로그램을 시범적으로 개성공단을 통해서 접목할 수 있는 길이 있는지, 특히 한수자유대재단이 북에 가서 했던 그런 경험이 있기 때문에 이걸 토대로 해가지고 그 가능성을 한번 듣고 싶은 것 같습니다. 네, 굉장히 현실적인 질문을 해주셨네요. 네, 또 한 분은 이 독일의 통일 경험으로 봤을 때 그 한국 사회가 통일 전에 직업 교육을 어떻게 준비해야 좋을까요? 하는 말씀을 주셨네요. 네. 그다음에 조금 더 나아가서는 통일이 빨리 올 수 있도록 하기 위한 준비로서는 무엇을 들 수 있을까요? 하는 이러한 좀 포괄적인 그런 질문을 주셨고요. 또 한 분은 이 고등학생이 하나 또 주셨네요. 네. 이것은 우리 좀 범위가 좀 커져 있습니다만 지금 북한 체제가 계속 이렇게 존속이 되고 있지 않습니까? 상당히 어려움을 겪고 있으면서도 계속 지속이 되고 있는데 우리가 이를 갖다 극복할 수 있는 통일 차원에서 극복할 수 있는 방법이 뭐냐 이걸까지 또 질문을 하셨습니다만 여기까지는 좀 답변하기가 좀 어려울 것 같지 않겠습니까? 오늘 직업 교육만 가지고 논의를 하겠습니다. 그러면 제일 먼저 이 동독 출신이었던 메르켈 총리가 지금 독일 연방의 총리가 될 수 있었던 거기에 흥미있는 질문에 대해서 우리 토마 씨한테 답변을 듣도록 하겠습니다.
Well, I always claim that there is no stupid question, only stupid answers. And I hope that I don't give a stupid answer to you now, because I'm an expert in VET, not that much in politics. But in any rate, let's put it like this. It's not only Chancellor Merkel who is coming from East Germany, but in fact also our president, President Gauck, he's also from East Germany. And I think this shows that in these days, now after one generation, after 25 years of reunification and Germany unified, this distinction between East and West is lessened, and there is you do no longer check or question whether somebody comes from East or West Germany. You just see what he's able and capable to do. You consider his aptitude, his personality, his experience. And I think those were the reason why the majority of Germans, we decided to vote for Chancellor Merkel, and also the reason that we have President Gauck right now.
자, 이어서 베르나르트 엘리거스한테 답변을 듣도록 하겠습니다.
Well, I was in Kaesong early this year, I think in March, and I don't know if you know that, but there is a beautiful vocational training center actually. It has been built by the South Koreans, has been equipped with machines. I think it's mainly in the field of textile and cut and come, something like computer-aided design and manufacturing. And it has been used zero by the North Koreans because of the difficult times. And it's really very, very difficult to coax the North Koreans, to bring the North Koreans to use that. I mean, there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of investment done already, and Kaesong is one of these places. But let me say, the one thing which is, I think, really difficult to do it too much in the open. The North Koreans, and then I refer now to the leadership, they don't like if the South Koreans come and say, come on, we built a training center for you and you train the people. And everything is done in the South Korean style there and best with South Korean teachers. It would functionally be the best solution, but for political reasons, North Korea will not accept. So my idea is, probably even in Kaesong, I thought it would be really good to do something, but maybe it would be even better to say you work with Chinese partners, or you work with partners in other countries, Mongolia, for example, or maybe also through us, for example. I realize it's difficult, and it's also not fair that you provide the money and in the end you cannot really appear there. But it's probably in the moment the only way the North Koreans will accept training in a third country, for example. Nevertheless, I think in the end it would pay for you. It would be good for you if you start to do that. And that could build the trust. Then later you could use things like this training center in Kaesong to train the North Koreans. And at least we see, for example, from the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, with all its difficulties it has, I think it's a great endeavor and it's a great approach. And it has been mainly also financed by South Koreans. So I think that would be really a way to go. We were asked what can Korea do before unification. That has been partly answered, and I said before, for example, things like bringing textbooks in or work with third parties like China or Mongolia might be a solution. I don't think, however, there's a way to speed. Well, there might be, with hindsight, if we look in 30 years, we might say this or that sped up the process. But don't forget, the future is really unpredictable. And in Germany, we did not do Ostpolitik, reconciliation, cooperation with East Germany to speed up unification. We simply did it to come to a modus vivendi, to come to a way to live together more peaceful than before. And so it's a little bit more modest, and I think that should be your goal in vocational training and also politically, not to say, okay, we do something and by that we speed up the unification process. Even if you have that in mind, it would be best first to say we need to come to reconciliation and we need to help the North Koreans to overcome their economic difficulties. And if that later leads to trust, and the trust leads to opening, and the opening maybe to unification, you would be very lucky. But I don't think there's an automatic way where you can say, we do this or that, and by this we speed up unification. A little bit this thinking in a blueprint, do this and do that, and the outcome is unification. That's really, unfortunately, not possible. And in that sense, we were happy in Germany. Nobody thought about unification, but we nevertheless got it. But it might be also a reason. If you think too hard about unification, you will certainly make bigger opposition from the North. Instead of saying we work on cooperation. That would be a more modest goal, but also a goal which might bring your ultimate goal, unification, faster than any other thing.
네, 고맙습니다. 이제 시간이 한 4분밖에 안 남았기 때문에 지금 마지막 질문이 될 수 있을 것 같습니다. 2개 질문이 되겠습니다. 토만 씨한테 하나, 그리고 젤리거 씨한테 하나 이렇게 되겠네요. 자, 먼저 간단한 질문입니다. 브리지 토만 씨, 예, 여기서 우리 아까 김영무 토론자께서 우리 탈북자가 3만 명이 있다. 이 사람들을 기능훈련 교사로 양성을 해가지고 통일 후에 북에 이렇게 고향으로 돌아가서 기능훈련을 시키는 그런 전사로 활용했으면 어떻겠느냐 그런 그 제안을 하셨지 않습니까? 이것이. 근데 독일에서도 그러한 사례가 있는 것인지 구체적으로 알고 싶다 하는 그런 질문을 주셨습니다. 두 번째, 베르하르트 젤리거 씨한테는 이 북에 가서 직접적인 직업 교육을 했던 그 경험으로 봐서 지금 보건대 북한이 모든 것이 부족한 것 같다. 그런데 금전적인 그 지원 이외에도 외적으로 도울 수 있는 것이 경험으로 봤을 때 무엇이 있었는가, 있을 수 있는 것인가라고 하는 점을 물어보았네요. 상당히 구체적인 질문을 주셨습니다. 네, 이제 답변은 1분 이내로 이게 시간이 거의 다 되기 때문에 그렇게 조정하겠습니다. 자, 그럼 먼저 토마 씨 간단하게 답변 부탁드립니다.
Exchange of staff, I think, is crucial because it brings trust into existence. And if you get to know each other, it's you know a person and you know his background, and then trust starts to grow. So this was always. This is important in general, though in the situation prior to the German reunification, this was quite difficult, and it was more possible to do it on neutral ground, where both sides could travel to. And after reunification, of course, this was an ultimate goal, to have the joint training qualifications and to also have exchange of teachers in order to train and to retrain the trainers in the eastern part of Germany, meaning the former GDR.
Okay.
yes.
Well, I really have to admit I didn't really want to paint a gloomy picture of our work in North Korea. Actually, I thought in these 12 years we achieved quite a lot, and these are wonderful people we work with, and they are Koreans. That means they are very hardworking, they are very reliable, and they are very curious, or they want to know, have knowledge. And they want to have knowledge not only for them, but also for their children. That reminds me I'm married to a Korean, so I know that education is so important here. And a small anecdote on that, once one of our co-workers, they said she wanted to have a book on German language, and I asked her, why, do you want to learn German? And she said, no, not for me, it's too late, but for my son or daughter, was just very young then. She has better opportunities than I have. That reminded me very much also of how South Koreans talk. So this caring for education, and that's a great promise for the future. Once they have the same opportunities like you, they probably will have the same success or more. Maybe you also have then 25 years later a president from Wonsan or from Rajin, who knows. And also, maybe the last one on that, I have no more time, but we did training for 100 people or 300 people in Wonsan on agriculture, and they did training, local training, for 45,000 people. It was a great success, I thought. It was not to make them completely new farmers, but to give them a little bit of training on a very broad way. And so you see, even small incentives can lead to big results there. So in that sense, I'm not at all gloomy. I think there's a great future for this cooperation.
네, 감사합니다. 이제 시간이 다 됐습니다. 오늘 우리는 독일의 통일 경험, 그리고 한수자이델재단의 북한에서 직업교육 경험을 바탕으로 삼아서 통일된 사회의 직업교육이 어떻게 되어야 할 것인가에 대해서 논의를 하였습니다. 예전에 우리 직업교육을 실업교육이라고 했었죠. 실질적인 업을 줄 수 있는 교육. 예, 앞으로 이 직업교육이 내실화되어서 통일에 대비할 수 있게 될 때 진정한 우리 민족의 통합도 이루어질 수 있는 하나의 첩경이 될 수 있으리라 생각을 합니다. 통일이 언제 이루어질지는 확실하게 모릅니다. 하지만 분명히 머지않아 이루어질 것입니다. 우리는 오늘의 논의를 바탕으로 삼아서 통일 한국 사회를 대비하여 직업 교육 훈련 체제를 정비하고 마련하여 나가야 할 것입니다. 오늘 바쁘신 중에도 진지하게 참여해 주시고 경청해 주신 여러분 대단히 고맙습니다. 마지막으로 오늘 참 좋은 발표를 해주신 두 분 독일에서 와주신 발표자, 그리고 토론해 주신 두 분께 다시 한번 뜨거운 감사의 박수를 보내주시면 고맙습니다. 여기서 오늘의 포럼을 모두 마치겠습니다. 감사합니다.